Hi makers, this is part 2 of how to build an electric bike. If you haven't seen part 1, I recommend watching it first. Click the box in the upper right corner. In this part, we will continue our build by making the front and rear lights, replacing the chain tensioner, and testing the bike again. Now, let's get started. After last week's failure, I screwed the nut back on, securing it with epoxy. Before I resume, I just want to say, I was stupid and ignorant. If the nut would get loose once, it would just be a question of time before it happens again. Now, let's resume.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
So yeah, there is that. I got a hairline crack in the back of my phone and a tooth of the rear gear broke off, never to be found. After this enormous failure, I cut out a length of steel and cut it into 2 shorter and 1 longer piece and drilled holes into both sides on each of the pieces. I wrapped the selected area of the frame in electrical tape and used a pair of screws and wing nuts to secure the shorter pieces around the metal, with the longer one sticking down. I printed a black roller and hammered a ball bearing into the center. I used a permanent marker to know where to drill the last hole. Following the drilling, I placed a small printed ring into the roller to prevent the roller itself from making contact with the steel, and secured both in place with another screw and wing nut. When testing, it worked. Kinda. Next, we are going to start working on the front light. This part of the bike was inspired by one of the world's fastest animals, the blue wildebeest. Anyway, after several days of printing, I assembled the front light housing. I used hot glue and it worked surprisingly well due to that it melts together the plastic and can expand well when temperature is changing. I applied a thin layer of putty and sanded down the excess. I also sprayed a few thin coats of spray paint. After drying, I secured the center of the 2 white LED strips into the housing with some silicone and wiped off the excess with a paper towel. I then secured the rest of the strips bit by bit, waiting 24 hours between sessions. Next, I used some silicone to secure a piece of frosted film into the hole in the back of the logo. This will act as a diffuser for the LEDs later. Then I took a piece of plastic as large as the hole and marked the center and the quarters and made holes at the markings. I secured 3 RGB LEDs with hot glue, though any color will work, connected all the colors lines in parallel, and soldered a pair of wires to the common and blue line. I pushed it carefully into the hole and secured it with hot glue. Next, I made holes in the grids, printed out the turn signal caps, and sanded them smooth. I sprayed a few coats of paint onto them. After drying, I soldered 2 3mm orange LEDs in series and pushed them through the cap until they were visible from the other side. I connected 2 thin wires to the 2 legs. I injected some silicone into the handlebar and pushed in the LEDs as well. 1 LED should be visible from the rear and 1 from the front. On the other side, drill a hole in the underside of the handlebar and push a wire through it, exiting at the end. I connected the other cap's wires to it and pulled on it until the cap was nearly in its place, and used silicone again and secured it. I refitted the throttle. On the other side, I chose to route the wires on the outside because it was easy enough to attach the grip. I tested the turn signal and it worked. Next, I took the 3D printed handlebar mount and melted the semi-rings. I quickly wrapped them around the handlebar. After that, I marked and cut away pieces of plastic with a multi-tool so the mount could be angled forwards. To further secure the front lights, I first removed the front fender mount and then pushed it into the slot in the back side of the front light. Next to it, I inserted a 3D printed piece. I marked this piece and the bottom of the lights where the holes on the fender mount are. After drilling out these holes, I inserted the mount and a printed piece and secured them with 2 screws. I screwed the whole front in place, but didn't tighten up the screw too much so the whole thing wouldn't break because of the suspension. I also secured the top of the front to the handlebar mount with a lot of hot glue. Next, I secured the side pieces of the front with hot glue as well. I connected the strips wires in parallel and soldered a resistor to the positive wires, though I later replaced it with a more proper regulator. For the moment though, it worked quite well. After that, I assembled the rear light housing with hot glue. Those of you who remember last week's video, I had to redesign this. I didn't know this at this point, so I applied a generous amount of glue. Though after my great discovery, I deeply regret this. After finally separating the pieces, I held the center print to the tubes above the rear fender mount and made markings so I could redesign the side parts. After the assembly, I painted the part black. While that dried, I cut a length of Ethernet cable and extracted a pair of wires, securing them with glue along the seat tube. After the paint dried, I secured the rear light housing to the fender mount with a screw. I then pushed the red LED strips wires into the pre-designed hole, removed the adhesive protector and secured the light in place. I trimmed and connected the wires to the 2 Ethernet wires and used heat shrink tubing. I soldered the other ends of the wires to the front lights once and turned on the switch. Voila! Both lights are on. Now, let's test it. So it's the 16th of January, and today's test was the 4th of its kind, and it didn't went well at all. So 2 things broke. For the first, the brackets that are holding the front panel to the handlebars, all 4 broke off, and so I can fix that with hot glue or silicone or trying melting them together again. But the bigger problem was that the motor gear fell off and with it the nut. So I found the motor gear, but I couldn't find the washer, and I've been searching for it for the past 4 to 5 minutes. For the moment I will try searching for another solution, and I don't think I will film the whole process, but I will show you the end results. So let's get started. Well, this video resulted in a setback too, but this test was crucial in order for this to never happen again. However, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like or dislike this video, and if you like this content, then you should absolutely subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you makers next weekend.